This video is going to be all about distant modulation, so moving from one key to another in a passage that are not closely related. So far, a lot of closely related keys that we look at are either one sharp away from each other or one flat away from each other, major, minor. We've gone through that, going through the circle of fifths and looking at what is closely related. This is a way of modulating from one key to another that are distantly related. So that means like maybe C major versus E major. That's 4 sharps apart or 4 accidentals apart, just as an example. So those are distantly related keys. Actually not even related, just distant keys. So a way to do that, and this is what we're going to go through today, is how to respell a German augmented 6 chord into a 5/7, using that as a modulation point, and then also respelling 7 diminished 7 chords into other 7 diminished 7 chords that will lead us into a new key. So before I go over, we're going to be doing a figured bass, or 2 figured bass exercises, one with a German respelled and one with a 7 respelled. But first I want to go through how we respell these and how we can understand that, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to look at C major for a moment, because that is the easiest. We're going to build a German augmented 6 in C major. So what that is going to need is a scale degree 1, a scale degree flat 3, E flat, a flat 6, or actually I'll just do sharp 4 next to it. So that would be F sharp, right? And then our flat 6, which would be A flat. I know that's a little clustered, but the reason being is how we're going to go through that. So we have 1, flat 3, sharp 4, flat 6, right? Okay, so how can you understand this as a 5/7 chord? How does this equal major minor quality? Because that's what we're trying to do, right? How do we get this to look like one of those? Well, first things first, we're going to respell a lot of things. I guess we don't need the scale degrees. We know what we're working with here. We're going to respell a few things so that way we can stack this into thirds, because obviously this is not stacked thirds, it is not a stacked chord. How do we figure out that this is major minor? My first recommendation is to get it as stacked thirds as possible, which in that case what I would do is put the A flat on the bottom, put a C, and then the E flat here, and then we're left with this F sharp. What can we do with this F sharp to make it into a stacked thirds? Well, what is F sharp equal to? It is equal to a G flat, okay? So if we translate F sharp into G flat and respell it that way, go flat, flat, G flat, right? Then in that case, we will be having a nice stacked 7th chord here, right? So this is major quality and then this is minor quality. And here is your 5/7 chord. So this actually is identical to this, right? Except look at the spelling here. This has a sharp, this has the flat 6. So this is a German in C major, while this is an A flat major minor 7 spelled this way. So then you can ask yourself, what key is that a 5/7 in? Well, that is a 5/7 in D flat major, right? Right? So actually, if you look how distantly related these keys are. This has no sharps and this has 5 flats. So you can use a German to bridge that gap. You just respell it and then you create a modulation. So in modulation wise, if you're going along and figuring things out, you would put a German and then you would do your modulation bracket and then you'd put a 5/7 in the new key of A flat, or sorry, D flat. That is an A flat chord. D flat major, right? So you can do that for your modulation. Let's go through another one to figure that out. All right. To go through another one, I'm just going to pick another key, build a German in that key, and then puzzle out what that could be a 5/7 of in a different key. Let's do, for fun, let's do B flat major. B and E, right? Okay. So let's first spell out a German in that key. That's going to be B flat major. So we're going to need scale degree 1, B flat. We're going to need scale degree flat 3. That's going to be D flat. We need sharp 4, which is E natural. And then we need our flat 6, which is G flat. Okay, so that's our German, that's how we spell it, that's how we think about it. I mean, usually in 4-part writing we make sure that this flat 6 is in the bass, but either way we're kind of just clustering it, right? Now we're going to try and make this into as stacked thirds as possible. If you think about it, if we put our G flat in the bass, we put our B, we put our D flat, and then we have our E natural, we almost have it stacked into thirds. Let's take that E natural and respell it. So E natural is equal to F flat, right? So that way we have a G flat, B flat, D flat, right? I mean, that's in the key over there, but yeah. And then an F natural. So what kind of chord is this? This is a G flat major triad with a minor seventh. So this is a G flat major minor 7 chord. That looks like a German in B flat. So that means that we are going from the key of B flat major, using that German to modulate to a 5-7. So then you ask yourself, what's G flat major minor 7 a 5 in? That's in C flat major. So again, you are going very far across the circle of fifths from 2 flats to 7, right? Okay. So through 2 of those examples, I hope that makes sense. There is also a reference sheet for you to look at to understand how that connection is made. What we're going to do next is respelling our 7 diminished chords. So fully diminished chords are very, very special chords, and that's because they break up the octave equally into equal parts, okay? So if you think about it, stacked minor thirds, if you just kept stacked, like, actually, let me write this out. So if you stack minor thirds, C to E flat, right? And then E flat to G flat to B double flat. Guess what? This is actually breaking up from C to C equally, okay? So if you look at a keyboard and wanted to look, these are all 3 half steps apart, and then if you continue 3 half steps above B double flat, you get back to C. So these are really special. They're kind of the same thing as augmented chords. They're really hard to invert because obviously if you're flipping minor thirds over minor thirds, you're just going to get more stacked minor thirds, right? So that makes this really, really special in respelling, okay? So I'm not going to use this one that's so many flats to deal with. We're going to do a fully diminished chord that doesn't have a ton of flats. So we're going to do F sharp fully diminished, okay? So I'll show you how we can respell that. Okay, so that is an F sharp fully diminished 7th chord, right? If we were thinking of this as a 7, what is this a 7 of? Well, again, you can think about the key F sharp goes to G. So this would be a 7 in G. It could be G minor or G major. I'll just put G, right? Because it's only a half step apart. All right, how we respell it is 1, we invert it. So we're going to take that F sharp and we're going to make this into a 6-5 chord, okay? So we're going to go A, C, E flat, F sharp. All right. Now, obviously this doesn't look like another 7 chord, right? It's not stacked thirds. So we're going to do just like what we did with the German. We're going to take this top note and we're going to respell it so that way it can make stacked thirds for us. So F sharp is equal to G flat. So now we can go A, C, E flat, G flat. All right. So that means if we go A, C, E, that is a diminished triad. And then A to G flat is also a diminished 7th. So this now, as we respelled this, this is now an A diminished 7th chord, which can be used as a 7 in what key? Think again, you go A is a half step away from B flat. Okay, so that's a way we can keep going. I'm gonna keep respelling this chord and show you how many times we can do this. But either way, this is a way that if you're going along like in a figured bass exercise, and let's say that we started in G major, right? And it gives you a 7. And then let's say that for some reason you're seeing a lot of 5-to-1 motion here in B flat, like a lot of Fs and B flats. And then you actually see over here, you could use this as a pivot to respell and get you into your B flat major. Or B flat minor, whatever works, right? Okay? Again, we're going to go through a figured bass exercise to figure this out. Just to give us space, I'm going to take that, I'm just going to put it there. So we already had A fully diminished, A, C, E flat, G flat. All right, and then we figured out that is the B flat, and this is an A diminished seventh, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this and we're going to invert it again. So then we get C, E flat, G flat, and we get an A. So we do the same thing. We can't identify this as a chord. We're going to take that top note, we're going to respell it so that way we can have our stacked thirds. Go C, E flat, G flat, and then A is equal to B double flat. So that means we have a C fully diminished seventh chord now, and that would relate us to what key. You look down at C, what is C a half step away from? D flat. Okay, so that's another relationship. We can modulate from B flat to D flat. We could even modulate from G to D flat, respelling this 2 times to get there, right? It's still the same chord. So actually, if you've noticed, these are all the same notes. I have not changed any of these notes. We're just respelling in order to relate it to a new key, okay? So if I was on the piano and I was playing this, and then I just played this, you're gonna hear the same exact notes, right? Just stacked differently, correct? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna take this C and we're going to, what I call refresh the accidentals. So we have a C, I'm gonna put this down an octave. So we have a C fully diminished chord that we were just leaving off on. I'm gonna refresh the accidentals because I hate using this many flats, and I'm gonna just respell the whole key, the whole chord into something else. So B double flat is the same as A, G flat is the same as F sharp, E flat is the same as D sharp, and then C is the same as B sharp, right? So this is actually, I mean, like C diminished is the same as B sharp diminished, right? I just was refreshing using that many accidentals because it's just a lot, right? So actually, then we can invert it again, guess what? So we're gonna do that same thing. We have a D sharp, we have an F sharp, we have an A, and then we have a B sharp. Again, you take that top note, make it into something else. B sharp is equal to C. We have a C up top now, translate all of those, D sharp, F sharp, A, C. Now we have a D sharp fully diminished seventh chord, which would be the 7 in, again, go D sharp to E, or E major, E minor, whatever. All right, if we were to respell this one more time, we would get back to our F sharp, right? So if I were to take this D sharp, put it up top, respell it into E flat, we get back to the beginning and we are back to our original chord that we started at the beginning of this section, which was the F sharp fully diminished seventh in G. So actually, if you think about it, there's 4 notes. We can only respell it 4 times before we come back to the beginning, okay? But that leaves us with 4 different possibilities to modulate and to respell that chord and to use it as a pivot chord. All right. I hope that all makes sense. Again, there is a handout sheet on Canvas for you to look at to reference. What we're going to do now is a figured bass exercise using this in application and how we solve this kind of issue. All right, so now we're going to look at some figured bass exercises and apply those German respellings and the 7 respellings to modulate from one key to another that are distant from each other on the circle of fifths, okay? So we're going to go through this example first, then we'll go through this one. I'm not going to do 4-part writing on top. We're just going to identify the chords and figure out our pivot. Number 1, obviously there are a lot of figures to deal with and a lot of things to figure out. So I highly recommend just doing the macro analysis above. It is going to be very hard to just throw Roman numerals into this without knowing where you're going, how it relates to each other, okay? So first things first, we have 1 sharp. Our first chord is E minor, so we are probably starting in E minor. So we're going to just do that. This one you can just throw a Roman numeral in. I mean, we know that that's going to be a 1 chord in E minor. All right. Next, we're going to look at this chord. A floating sharp means that the third above this note is raised. So that means we have an E, a G sharp, a B, and a D. So this is an E major minor 7 chord. Again, we're not going to just dive in with Roman numerals. E major minor 7 in root position. Next, blank, so that means it is a triad in root position. So we have A, C, and E. That is an A minor chord in root. This is a B, 6-4, so that is a triad in second inversion. So this is the fifth. Think about a note below it, and then another note below that. We get E, G, B. That is an E minor chord in first inversion. Or second inversion, sorry. Okay, there's some figures going on here, okay? Actually, the more information that it gives you, the better, because it's easier to puzzle out once you can interpret what these mean for you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually kind of take these notes off to the side. So it's given me a C. This means that there's a third above the C, so that's going to be an E. And there's a fifth. We have a G. Okay, so now you're probably thinking C major, but this sharp 6, okay, that's weird. So we have an A sharp. That is a really odd chord. We could try and make it in stacked thirds, putting the A sharp down here and trying to spell out this chord, A sharp, C, E, G. Unfortunately, that's not really a chord that we can spell out. So then what I do is that I go through all of the fancy chords that we know about from Theory 3. I think through that in my head. I go, okay, well, this isn't a Neapolitan. There's no way that that's true, because I would be looking at, if we're still in E minor, we would be looking at something built on F. Okay, so that's not true. Then I think, is this a secondary dominance? Well, we can't spell it as a major minor chord, so that's kind of funky. So instead, what I think about is our augmented sixes, okay? So let's say that we're still in E minor. I always find where is scale degree 1. Okay, that one's there. Remember, we're in E minor, so that means that naturally occurring in this key, nothing will be altered if it is a flat 6 or a flat 3, right? So then I go across and I go, okay, what is a flat 3? Well, that is our G. Flat 6 is our C, and then A sharp is our sharp 4. So that is a German augmented 6 in E minor. Okay. Great. Okay, so we're just going to leave that. We're going to keep going. One floating natural means that the third above this is raised or naturaled, right? So D, F natural, A. It's going to be a D minor chord in root position. Next, 6-5. This is a first inversion 7th chord. It gives me a B flat. Again, if you want to, you can always take everything off to the side and figure out everything going on. So this is saying that there is a fifth above this and it is natural. So a fifth above that is F, natural. Then there is a sixth above that being G. And then it didn't say anything, but it is implied that there is also a D. So puzzling that out, making this into something that is a triad, G, B, D, and F. Okay, so what does that mean? G, minor triad, minor 7th, so that is a G minor 7 chord in first inversion. Okay, we're going to keep going. Again, just trust what these tell you, just go off of that. We know that this is a 7th chord in second inversion, so this is the 5th, but still you can always just take your notes off to the side. We have a G. A third above it is flatted, so B flat. Then we have a fourth above it, which will be C. And then what are we missing? We are missing an E, right? So it just didn't tell us that there's an E there. And that matches the key. So that means that we have a C, E, G, B flat. That is a C, 4, 3. That is a major minor 7th chord in second inversion. Next, this is a triad in first inversion, and the sixth above this note is raised, so you can count up 6. You go to F, okay, that one's naturaled. So this is going to be an F, A, C, which is an F major 6 chord. Next is a C, so this is in root position, but the 7th above this is flatted. So we have C, E, G, B flat. It's going to be C7. And then last, we have this F natural in root position, so F major. Okay. So then what I do is that I really look over here and I see, what key are we going to? All right, well, a C7 to an F, that's pretty obvious that this is going to be a 5-7 to a 1. You can always put in those Roman numerals for really easy seeing things. I always put the key that we're going to down here just to kind of keep me reminded on everything. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to E minor. We're going to go through with Roman numerals and see how far we can get with everything, okay? So looking at this, obviously at first you might be like, why is there an E major minor 7th chord, but major minor 7th? A light bulb should be going off in your head that this is a secondary dominance, right? So this would be a 5-7 of 4, and guess what? It resolves to 4, so everything is all good. E minor 6-4, that is going to be a 1-6-4, and then it goes to a German, which we already identified. I'm going to actually just stop there because I know that we are going in with the notion that we might be respelling a German to make it into something else, okay? But we're just going to stop there. We're going to jump back to F major. We're going to go through backwards, see how far we can get. So this is a 1-6. This is a 5-4-3. This chord is a G major minor 6-5. If we're in F major, that is actually a 2-6-5, so it's just a 2 and with a 7 thrown on in first inversion, which is very conventional. Next, we're going to look at that D minor, so you can think about that, and it's actually a 6. And now here we are. How do we talk about a German? How do we bridge this gap? Obviously, D minor is nothing in E major. In E minor, it could be a minor 7. But there is a smoother transition that we can do here, and it is respelling that German that we already discovered. So I'm going to make that our pivot chord, and we are going to look and see how this can be respelled. So here's our German. These were our notes for our German, right? And what we are trying to do is respell this to match this new key. And what I said about earlier is that Germans you respell into 5-7s, right? So how can I respell this into a 5-7? Well, what I'm looking for in F major is a C, E, G, B flat. Well, if you look at this, C, E, G, A sharp, but what is A sharp equal to? B flat. So what we can do here, and C is our bass, we can just make that a nice 5-7, and that's how we did it. It's kind of nice having the context because you can think in your head when you hit this chord that you're trying to force this into a C major minor chord, which is a little bit nicer than just being given a German and then say respell it. Okay? We're going to go down to the next example. It's going to show us more respelling, more parts of respelling. Okay, so same thing as before, we're going to go across with our macro analysis, step 1, and then we're going to figure out what keys we go to from there and how we can make a modulation seamless. Okay, so first thing, 2 sharps, I'm thinking it's either B minor or D major. We're starting on a D major chord, so probably D major, and I'll put a nice 1 there. Okay, so we have D major. This is a G given to us, nothing underneath, so that is a G major triad. Okay, we have an E, and then this is raised. So the third above this note is raised, so we have E, G sharp, B, and D, which is an E major minor 7th chord. We're going to keep going. This is a second inversion 7th chord, okay, and E is our 5th. So then I'm looking down and I go, okay, so this is A, C sharp, E, G. This is an A major minor 4-3. Next, D just floating, it's fine, that's D major. We already figured that out earlier over here. All right, now we have a flat 7. So that means that this is in root position, but that 7 is flatted, okay? So again, this is a little trickier note, so I'll take it off to the side. It gives us a C sharp. We want an E above it. We have a G above it, and then we have a B flat above that. So we have C sharp, E, G, B flat. What is this chord? C sharp, E, G, that is diminished. C sharp to B flat is also diminished. So this is a C sharp diminished 7th chord. We're going to just leave that, keep going. All right, now we have a B with a raised third. So that means that we have a B, D sharp, F sharp. That is a B major chord. Next, this is a first inversion triad. The third above this is raised though, so that means that we have a C sharp, E, G sharp. So C sharp minor 6. All right, root position 7th, but the third above this is raised. That means we have an F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and an E. So F sharp, A sharp, that is a major triad with a minor 7th, F sharp, major, minor 7. And then last but not least, we have a B with a raised third, which we kind of discovered over here is B major. All right, so from there, I'm gonna actually just give us some space for some nice Roman numerals. We already said that we are starting in D major. And then if you look here, what are we ending in? Well, we're probably ending in B major. Okay, so I'll do a 1 and a 5 here again. Give me my parentheses, ending in B major, no biggie. Okay, I'm gonna actually bring these Roman numerals a little lower just to keep it clear. D major, and then this is a 1. Okay. All right, I'm gonna continue with D major and see how I can go. So D to a G, that's a 4 chord, that's easy. E major minor 7, that's obviously not our 5, but again, major minor, big light bulbs going off in my head that this is a secondary dominance, okay? So that's a 5-7 of 5. Going to a 5-4-3, so that makes sense, and then back to D major, which is a 1. Next is a C sharp fully diminished 7. This is actually really easy in D major, right? Because that is our 7-7. But then, how does that resolve? Usually that resolves to a 1 chord, right? But instead we're given B major. If we try to describe that in D major, then we would get a major 6, which is not common. Yeah, there's a little bit of mode mixture, but I would not encourage us to do that, especially if we know that we're going to B major. So then I'll look here, I'll keep going backwards. This is a 2-6. Now in B major, I'm thinking B major is obviously a 1, and then how can we bridge this gap, okay? So same as before, obviously this is a little bit easier because you know that this is going to be some sort of pivot chord, but now we're gonna take this off to the side and we're gonna try and respell it to match that this could be a 7 chord in B major instead, okay? So I'm gonna take that to the side. We have a C sharp, E, G, B flat. What we are trying to do is make this into a respelled fully diminished 7th chord that would fit in B major. So then I think in my head, what is the, not B flat, sorry. What is the 7th chord in B major? Well, that is built on A sharp, right? And then I would build that, so A sharp, C sharp, E, and G is our 7th in B major, right? This is our 7 in D major. And is there a way that we can connect these two chords? Well, actually, B flat and A sharp are the same note. So if we respell that B flat as A sharp, then we get our 7 in this one, in B major, right? The only thing that we have to be careful of is this is the only time that it is acceptable to have differing inversion symbols on your modulation pivot, because obviously this one is built on C sharp, this one's built on A sharp, so this actually means that that's the 3rd. So this is a 7 diminished 7, and this is a 7 diminished 6-5. It is the same chord though, it just is giving you a different bass note. All right, great, so that is modulating distantly using a German augmented 6 and a 7 diminished 7 chord.